What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily. So I've been using the iPhone 11 as my primary smartphone for the last 6 months now. I've had it since launch day. It's been my personal everyday device. And I do think it's a great phone overall. But as we head further and further into 2020, with rumors of a new, cheaper iPhone coming out soon, and countless other new and inexpensive Android devices flooding the space too, I think it's time we re-review the iPhone 11. We'll look back over the last few months of using this thing, and I'll talk about all of the things I like and the things that I don't like. And also, I do want to evaluate whether or not the iPhone 11 is a good purchase right now moving forward, if maybe you are in the market for a new phone. So it's no secret that Apple's products sell at a premium. And while the iPhone 11 is technically the cheapest new current iPhone you can buy, at least right now, cheap isn't exactly the word I'd use for it. Apple still sells this phone for the launch price of $699 for the 64GB model, and it only goes up from there. There hasn't been a price change from Apple, and you shouldn't expect one either until the next generation of iPhones comes out in the fall. Apple just doesn't budge on price. But fortunately, you don't have to get the phone directly from them. Amazon has a few unlocked and carrier-specific iPhone 11s for sale right now, starting at $639. Now, these are from their Renewed program, and that's basically Amazon's open box and return inventory. But you're still getting basically a semi-new customer return or barely used phone at a pretty decent discount. And it's from Amazon anyway, not some sketchy third party. So there should be some level of trust there. They even have like a 90-day guarantee, which is pretty amazing. If you are interested in looking to get an iPhone 11 that way, or maybe any other iPhone for that matter, I will have a bunch of links down below to those listings and a few others in the description. So check down there so you don't miss out on any good deals. Any which way you want to spin it though, the iPhone 11 is still a $600 to $700 device at least, and that's the price point even 6 months later now that we have to go off of. Physically, the iPhone 11 looks like an iPhone. I know that sounds weird, but that's sort of the best way to describe it. Compared to literally any other smartphone from 2019 or 2020, this device looks dated. But this is the same design and style Apple has utilized since the iPhone X in 2017. And if you're an iPhone user like myself, this is just what we get. Realistically, there's nothing inherently wrong with the whole thing. Yes, the top notch isn't great when we have nearly bezel-less phones now, and the iPhone 11 in particular has chunkier black borders all the way around that frame the phone and stand out quite a lot. But even Apple's least expensive iPhone doesn't compromise on the materials and build quality. The all-glass and aluminum construction are comparable to the $1,000 plus iPhone 11 Pro, and that's great. You're still paying for an Apple product after all, and that comes with a certain level of premium materials that you'd expect. Unfortunately, in my case, the back glass, for whatever reason, hasn't held up too well. After having multiple phones in my pocket at once, and using this device without a case for a bit, there are some scratches that stand out, which is a bummer. But it happens, and it's something I can live with. It doesn't have so much to do with any sort of durability issue, it's more just my own carelessness. I think the single biggest thing that critics have against this phone is the less than stellar display. And look, they're totally right. The iPhone 11 screen is an IPS LCD panel with a resolution of just 1792 by 828. Even Samsung's budget A series phones from last year that retailed for like $200 or $300 had nicer screens. They had AMOLED panels, no less, and true 1080p resolution. That just doesn't bode well for the iPhone. It doesn't look good when you compare the specs straight on. But if you're analyzing the iPhone 11 screen in a vacuum, not making any comparisons, and maybe you didn't even know all the specs up front, the Liquid Retina display here still looks good. There's nothing wrong with the viewing experience in general. Yeah, you might be able to pick out the pixels, but it's still a bright and colorful display. And for a vast majority of people, they probably won't know any different, especially coming from an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 8, which I think most people interested in this phone would be. And size-wise, I think 6.1 inches is that perfect fit. It's not too big, it's not too small. I can still use the phone one-handed just fine, but the screen is large enough to where I feel like I still have plenty to work with. Now, with iPhones, Apple obviously has control over both the hardware and the software. They make the processors that utilize their own iOS. and that means that it's up to them to create the best possible user experience with their phones. And this is something they do really well. The A13 Bionic chipset and Apple-designed GPU inside this phone are tough to analyze. You can't exactly make a direct comparison to like the latest Snapdragon processor necessarily, and the 4 gigs of RAM this phone packs might even suggest the device is underpowered. But you have to base your judgment on the overall experience of using the iPhone 11 each day. And coupled with the latest version of iOS, Apple offers the kind of UI and ecosystem that people just can't seem to give up, myself included. I think it would be unfair of me to say that everything has been seamless in the last 6 months though. Apple did go through a rough patch of bug-filled iOS updates and pushed out new versions like every few days to try and play catch up. But since then, using the iPhone has been a nearly flawless experience. Because Apple has so much control over everything, even the third-party apps from the App Store, there just isn't really anything that goes wrong. Obviously, this is still a current iPhone after all, and I don't think it's slowed down at all since I've had it, which is good, and I don't expect to anytime soon. Performance is great, the phone is fast, and any game or app in the App Store is going to run well on this phone, of course. And looking ahead, I think Apple is also really committed to offering updates with its phones for years to come. You can literally get the latest version of iOS on the iPhone SE, which came out in 2016. So likely the iPhone 11 will have a 4 or 5 year lifespan at a minimum. And that's great because you are still paying a ton for this phone. So having the latest software and support, I think, is a big plus. When it comes to battery life, this is something I've gone back and forth with. Right off the bat, I should tell you that after 6 months, my battery health somehow is already down to 94%, so at least a percentage decrease per month so far. I suspect that's partly due to the fact that I utilize a USB-C fast charger every single day, and not the crappy 5-watt brick that ships with this phone. And that consistent fast charging is rumored to negatively affect the health of the battery. But I also do use my iPhone a lot each day, so it's not like it's getting a break either. There are times when I know I'm staring at my phone more than usual, and it doesn't always make it through the day. But if I can keep my hands off it for just a little bit, the iPhone 11 can still make it through the day and then some with 7 or more hours of screen on time. I'll have like 20% of life left or more, and I think that's pretty good. There have only been a few times thus far where I was surprised at how quickly the iPhone was drained, but through casual day-to-day use, like endless Twitter scrolling, YouTube videos, texting, and a handful of games here and there, things like that, I think the iPhone does do a nice job getting through. So before we get into the cameras, let me just touch on a few other pros and cons here with this phone. First off, the stereo speaker setup is great. I think Apple offers one of the best out loud listening experiences on any phone, and I'm always playing music, videos, or games using those great external speakers. You've got wireless charging, which I personally never use, but it's there at least. And the iPhone is IP68 water and dust resistant. I have put that to the test in the shower, in the pool, in the sink, and countless other instances, and I can say that I've never had a problem there. The one thing that still bugs me though about this phone, and really any iPhone nowadays, is Face ID. I've been using Face Unlock since it launched on the iPhone 10, and while yes, it has improved and gotten faster over the years, it's still frustratingly inconsistent. Hats and glasses for me are almost always a no-go, and any other angle but straight on is a 50-50 chance of working. Having to adjust the angle of the phone, re-swipe up to try again, or ultimately wait for it to completely fail and prompt the passcode all happen multiple times per day. And I know Face ID is very secure, which is why sometimes it's a little touchy, and that's also why it allows for its use with Apple Pay and other third-party apps. But honestly, it's just not something I've enjoyed on any iPhone the last couple of years, and I wish we at least had been offered an additional option to unlock, like a fingerprint sensor on the power button or under the screen. Unfortunately, at this point, I just don't see Apple doing that on any future iPhones. So in regards to the cameras, I've been fortunate enough to take probably hundreds, if not thousands of pictures at this point with this phone. I've also compared it to a handful of other devices at all different price points too. And in my time using it, I found that there are a couple of things the iPhone does really well, and a couple that it doesn't. First off, I think the iPhone takes some of the best selfies of any smartphone. Whether you're snapping a quick picture or utilizing portrait mode to its fullest effect, the iPhone's front camera is the one I'd choose over probably any other device right now. The dual rear cameras on the iPhone, which include just a 12 megapixel standard lens and a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, they're also enough to get the job done a majority of the time. In the right lighting conditions, I have no complaints. I think the phone takes a good looking, well balanced shot. The area I think the iPhone most noticeably falters though is in less than ideal lighting conditions. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about night mode specifically. I think the iPhone's night mode is great, especially when you let it do its thing during a super long exposure shot. But in like dim lighting outdoors or dim indoor shots, shadowy outdoor shots, stuff like that, the iPhone struggles to balance the lighting and capture the detail. It's not like it's a bad picture, but things just look a little dull. For most people, the camera setup is going to be great. It's way better than average, and there's a lot of potential. But as other smartphone manufacturers continue to focus on their camera tech specifically by adding more lenses and introducing more features, and overall just making it a main selling point, I think the iPhone 11 this year is going to have a tougher time competing. And looking ahead, I'm interested to see how Apple compensates in the fall with its latest iPhones. So here are my final thoughts. If it wasn't obvious already, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the iPhone 11. It's still not a cheap phone, even taking up the Amazon Renewed option of $639. That's a decent price to pay, but I still would go with this phone over the 11 Pro as a better overall value. And looking ahead at the long term, this is absolutely a phone I could have for 3 or 4 years at least. I know it's going to be supported, I know it's going to hold up, and realistically, it's also going to retain a significant chunk of its value too. I can look past some of its flaws because what it does well, the software, the user experience, the build quality, the cameras, it does really well. And for that reason, I still have no problem recommending this phone, even if you were looking to buy one well into 2020. But what do you guys think? Is the iPhone 11 still a good phone to buy this year? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later.